Welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin in the United States, where former U.S. President Donald Trump has been indicted by a Manhattan grand jury in New York after an investigation into alleged hush money payments to an adult film star, Stormy Daniels. It marks the first time that a current or a former American president will face criminal charges. In the final weeks of the 2016 presidential election, Mr. Trump's lawyers, Michael Cohen, tried to buy the silence of an actress who said she had a sexual encounter with a Republican during his days as a TV reality star. Trump initially denied the encounter or knowledge of the transaction, but now says it was a legitimate legal expense. Trump's attorney, Joe Tacopina, says it will likely be arraigned next week. Well, Donald Trump has reacted to the development, calling the indictment political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. He denies any wrongdoings and adds the so-called witch hunt will backfire on Joe Biden and the radical Democrats in 2024. The former president is expected to surrender to authorities next week, after which the content of the indictment will be made public. Dr. Batilo, to talk about.
Well, Donald Trump, this used to be one of those news items for more than a year now. But now the investigators have now, taken the matter to the level of prosecutors who have indicted, the grand jury has indicted President Donald Trump, the first American president out of office to be so indicted. And we're told that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office will file charges against him and is likely to show up in court next week for the proceedings to continue. Well, two quick things about this. One, we keep seeing in many other jurisdictions the fact that nobody is above the law. In the United Kingdom, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson left office because of ethical issues. At the end of the day, even out of office, he still had to appear before an ethics committee in the House of Commons. We have also seen recently in that same United Kingdom questions being raised about certain aspects of the latest budget and concerns about whether or not the wife of the Prime Minister associated with a particular children's trust, whether that children's trust will benefit from it or not. And now in the United States, we've seen, President Donald Trump being indicted and likely to go on trial. A major key player in this is Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, who was indicted with regard to campaign finances, campaign expenses in 2018. Michael Cohen is now a prosecution witness, and it's on the basis of some of his, depositions that we have reached this stage in the Trump case. Trump, of course, dismisses it as a political persecution. He thinks it's all, politically motivated to stop, the front runner in the Republican Party for the 2024 presidential election from going forward. Before now on Truth Social, he said, if he's indicted or if he's arrested, it will lead to chaos and destruction. Well, would that happen? And then, of course, he has no option because that's a country where the rule of law works. So it's about nobody being above the law. It's also about accountability. Trump further argues that the statute of limitation applies in this particular matter. In the New York jurisdiction, statute of limitation with regard to felonies is 5 years. It's been 6 years now since this particular offense paying, slush funds to Stormy Daniels, a porn actress who has said she did not do anything wrong at all. But that's for the court to determine. So he says he didn't even have any extramarital affair and that nothing happened. But on record, through Michael Cohen, about $310,000 were purportedly paid to Stormy Daniels and then passed on as tax considerations for Michael Cohen, who was said to have even collected more money to cover up, similar activities for former President Trump. So an indictment, however, is not a conviction. So the matter goes to court Will he be convicted at the end of the day? Will his lawyer's argument about statute of limitation apply with regard to this felony? Or will it be reduced to a misdemeanor? Even if it's a misdemeanor, the statute of limitation in New York covers just about 2 years. But this will be an interesting case. What complicates the Trump situation is that there are other cases in other parts of the United States, where people are raising questions of integrity, of accountability, and the law, the rule of law, with regard to Donald Trump. But definitely this may affect his presidential ambition for 2024. It may also affect, of course, his political career.
So one thing is certain, after 50 years, and it was about 50 years ago, I think it was in 1973, Trump was first mentioned, with all of this shenanigan in a case where him and his father were not willing to give people homes based on their race in America then. And after 50 years, Trump has finally been indicted because he has a way of evading the law. He's been a Teflon when it comes to the law. He's got a very good lawyer. I think it was Kuhn in the 70s that told him that the best way to be able to attack when people attack you is counterattack. And he has always gotten away with that. Trump got away with a lot. He got, very, very big tax rebates in the city of New York when he built his hotels then, and a lot happened to him. But the thing about American justice system is that when you check historically, Trump is the first past president that will go through this, but he's not the first leader to go through this. Remember the case of Spiro Agnew, the vice president of America in the 70s that went through all of this, and he had to withdraw, had to leave the office as vice president. The case here is about Stormy Daniels, $130,000. His former lawyer, Michael Cohen, was said to have paid $130,000 US to Stormy Daniels as hush, money for the affair both of them had. But what happened, why all of this came out, was because Michael Cohen and Trump are falling on bad times now. So Michael Cohen is ready, to testify against Trump. And this case has gone on for a while. The Washington Post did a very interesting op-ed yesterday saying that this, indictment, that was finally voted on by a grand jury with the DA, Alvin Bragg, involved, might just, help tip Trump over the line as regards, the 2024 elections, because a lot of people are looking and saying, hey, truth has to be said, that his base will be riled up and say this is a witch hunt against him. But the law is the law, and like Dr. Bat said, there are other 30 cases in and around Trump as regards this. But this is going to set a precedent and open things up as regards all of this. And let's not also forget that Trump has had his hand meshed in so many things, so many court cases here and there, that he's been able to wriggle his way out of. Also, will this also affect his chance in the Republican Party? Although Ron DeSantis, Florida governor, has not said he's going to come into the race, but a lot of people are tipping him to run. He's the only, albatross that can stand in the way of Donald Trump as regards the emergence of 2024. The big question will be, as regards Trump, will he be able to get through beating Ron DeSantis in the primaries to be able to, face a possible Joe Biden in the next elections? Will this rally up his base? All of this left to be seen. But also the argument the Washington Post was making was that this might be, a very easy case as regards, indictment for him, and he might be able to use it, to his own advantage, because Washington Post was arguing that they thought that they would have gotten a stronger case against him to be able to nail him. But if it's just payment, as hush money for Stormy Daniels for an affair, they don't think it's quite strong enough. But all of that will be dependent on when the case finally starts. It will go up to, pre-trials, trials, and it will go through the legal gamut before a sentencing, is finally done. But people in the past, historically, have gone through this, level of indictment, and they were still allowed to run for office. I mean, if we remember Rick Perry, the former governor, I think of Florida, if my memory serves me right, the time he was running for the Republican Party, in the last election cycle, he was going through an indictment. And even despite that, I think that was in 2016, leading up to that Trump first victory. Even despite that, after the fact that he was going through an indictment and all of that, he was still made, he was still given a position in the energy ministry in America. So people are arguing also that it might not really stop anything. But let's watch how all of this pans out in the coming days as regards Donald Trump. But the big story out there is that Donald Trump has added another feather to his very, very, debilitating record. The first president to be impeached twice in America. Also, the first past American president, to be indicted. Let's see how all of this pans out. So, Donald Trump is a gift that keeps giving. All right, Dr. Bati, let's take a listen to what Nima Rahimi, a former federal prosecutor in U.S., says about these charges.
We're witnessing American history. This is the first time a former president has been charged with a crime. So this is unprecedented. And the question is, are there other prosecutors throughout the country, like Special Counsel Jack Smith or Atlanta District Attorney Fani Willis, who are going to follow suit and charge Donald Trump with more serious crimes? The indictment relates to a $130,000 payment Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, paid to porn star Stormy Daniels in 2016 to cover up an alleged affair between the two. After the election, Trump reportedly reimbursed Cohen, saying that the payment was legal fees. It's too early to speculate what type of sentence Trump would get if he were convicted by a New York jury. The judge would likely base it on the evidence that was presented at trial, whether Trump testified and whether he perjured himself. I expect Republicans in Congress to rally around the former president. We already know Representative Jordan and the House Oversight Committee have tried to subpoena Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and compel his testimony before Congress. Many Republicans believe that this is a political witch hunt. This is all part of the weaponization of the Department of Justice and prosecutors throughout the country. And this whole investigation is illegitimate. And I fully expect those talking points and rallying around Trump to continue. Legally speaking, this case won't affect the 2024 presidential race. If Trump wins, of course, no sitting president can be prosecuted, so the case will have to stop. But even if Trump is convicted before the election, these charges don't disqualify him from holding public office. Although Trump has said he's going to be arrested, that's not going to happen. He's going to be booked, of course, which means that he's going to be fingerprinted and have his mugshot taken. But Secret Service will escort him to New York court where he'll make his first appearance. His attorneys will plead not guilty, and he will be released on his own recognizance. The judge won't order any bail in this case. This was a case that Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg felt very strongly about. Michael Cohen, of course, was charged for this exact conduct by the feds. People thought, what makes Donald Trump different? Why should he escape prosecution when he was involved in the same? People have questioned why it's taken so long to bring these charges. Of course, it relates to conduct that took place back in 2016. The previous district attorney in Manhattan, Cyrus Vance Jr., did not charge this case. And when Bragg took office in 2021, he reopened this investigation. Of course, New York has a 5-year statute of limitations with respect to these offenses, but that 5 years can be extended for an additional 5 years if the criminal defendant is out of state, which of course Trump was when he was president and living in the White House. At trial, I expect Trump and his lawyers to present one of two defenses. They're going to say that Cohen is a rat who's trying to get his revenge, or they're going to present the Melania defense and say that this payment had nothing to do with the 2016 election, and it was just to protect Melania and his family from embarrassment. As a former prosecutor, I believe that no one is above the law, even a former president. But I do wonder if we're opening up a political Pandora's box. If Republicans regain control of the White House, are they going to prosecute individuals like Hunter or Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton? Is this an unprecedented first step that is going to harm our criminal justice system and our democracy?
Okay, basically the same point. Yeah. About his lawyers going to argue about the statute of limitation. And then again, whether this will be treated as a felony or it will be treated as a misdemeanor, which is a smaller offense in the New York jurisdiction. And then, of course, as I said, indictment is not a conviction. But he made a very interesting point that even if he is convicted, it does not stop him from running for the presidential office in 2024. But in terms of optics, in terms of the drama, of course, this has reverberated all over the world. And for us, at this end, what we can take from it is that the rule of law works. Nobody is above the law. Even out of office, a president, a former president, can be asked to come and respond to certain issues. So he will look for all ways to portray this as political persecution, as politically motivated. But at the end of the day, how about those other criminal cases across America. If he gets away with this, will he get away with other, indictments elsewhere that could also go to court? But another strong point that I think he made is that, yes, the Republican establishment is going to back him up heavily. He remains a very prominent, leader of the Republican Party. And just as he's beginning to jumpstart his plans to run again in 2024, then this comes along the way. But in any case, if he doesn't succeed in clearing himself, then the Democrats may be looking at, major victory in 2024.
All right. So, I mean, like the prosecutor said, and like Dr. Abati said, I think it's quite obvious. Couple of things, like I have said before, if you look at the case of Rick Perry of Florida, it will not make any real dent. I mean, Trump, even despite all of this, will still be able to run for presidency, at some point. But the backlash will be what he will do to his base. So take, for instance, what he has started doing to his base. Normally, when you get indicted like that, yes, you get booked, you get in, you get your mug shots, which a lot of people would like to see, okay, Donald Trump's mug shot and all the drama behind that. But the most important thing that really happens is, the fact that you just go through that process and you go through, to trial. And he will spin it in such a way that he's been attacked. And he has started already. He wasn't going to be arrested, but Trump came out saying that he knows he's going to be arrested, trying to create hysteria among his followers and all of that. And that's why, the likes of Washington Post was arguing that this might just even be in his favor as the election, because he's going to milk all of this and milk the sentiment behind that this is a witch hunt and all of that. Only yesterday some people were already saying, oh, maybe this is the time to reverse roles and lock him up for Donald Trump, and let's see how that pans out. But only time will tell. But one thing you cannot take away from Trump, that it's a formidable part of the Republican Party. They'll definitely rally around him. And let's see how this pans out in the coming days. All right. Here in Nigeria, a former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, NBA Chief Olisa Agbakuba, yesterday declared that there was no constitutional provision for an interim government in Nigeria, and that therefore dismissed the idea as total hogwash. Agbakuba's comment comes a day after the Department of State Services, DSS, alerted the nation to plots by some political actors to bring an interim government into power and stop Bola Tinubu from being inaugurated as president of Nigeria. Meanwhile, reactions continue to trail the announcement by the Department of State Services that some politicians and their collaborators have finalized a plot to install an interim national government in Nigeria and stop the swearing-in of President-elect. A section of supporters of the ruling All Progressive Congress said the sinister attempt to stall the inauguration of the President-elect Bola Tinubu will fail. Our Rise correspondent Godfrey Eshemogai reports.
There is a sense of euphoria by scores of APC supporters at the Unity Fountain. But this now has a dark shadow cast over it by concerns about plots to stop the May 29th inauguration ceremony of Mr. Tinubu. It is very likely most of the supporters who have gathered to celebrate only have a faint idea on the impact of having an interim government in place. But for those who know, they say an interim government is unacceptable.
By surprise that some people who doesn't have the interest of this nation are calling for entering government. They can only enter their house because nobody can truncate the elections or to tamper with our democracy in this country.
The call for interim government is uncalled for. It is satanic, it is wicked. And that's why you see us here, you see this crowd that is here to defend democracy, to defend the mandate freely given to the APC, and also by extension, President-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and also Senator Kashim Shettima.
The tension around the presidential post, insists, is a needless waste of energy, as it is now time to rebuild a broken and divided country.
We are also using the opportunity to speak to Nigerians, particularly those who did not vote for Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to understand that the elections have now happened. We now have a president-elect. Let us all come together, to support Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to deliver the dividends of democracy, which is basically improving the living conditions of all Nigerians.
It has been a season of protests in recent weeks, mostly a fallout of recent elections. But this group says enough is enough. It is therefore calling on authorities to come out hard against street protests.
Enough of these street protests and campaigns defacing the name of Nigeria. The international communities are watching, and we, as emerging leaders of this country, we no longer want anybody in this country to fan any form of amber, of discord or disunity anymore. Because any attempt or attempted attempt forthwith, we are going to invoke Aluta wizardry on whosoever is involved.
With the Presidential Election Tribunal set to begin hearing the petitions of those seeking to nullify the presidential polls, the growing uncertainty around the polity subsists. Godfrey Eshemoge, Arise News.
Right, Dr. Bati?
Well, I mean, we dealt with this subject yesterday, and the point was made that the interim national government is a piece of illegality. So declared in 1993 by a court of competent jurisdiction. And that's what has been restated by Olisa Agbakoba SAN, who in any case knows the subject very well. And it says that it is arrant nonsense for anybody to make any suggestion that will subvert the democratic process that was concluded on February 25 and also March 18, with aggrieved persons now going to the tribunal, and that whoever is aggrieved should go to the courts, and that the Department of State Services should not hesitate to impose severe consequences on persons who may have the ambition to derail the state. And there are others who hold that view also, although the PDP, speaking through Time Frank, thinks that it's an attempt to arrest Atiku Abubakar and Mr. Peter Obi. The Labour Party says, well, they are committed to a democratic process and that the DSS should do its job. If it can identify anybody, it should go ahead and arrest them.
Okay. All right. We're now being joined by Yekachi Adiko, a security expert. So Yekachi, I mean, I'd like to know your read on all of this, matters as regards, ING and the likes.
Yeah, thanks, Rufai. I think that there's a lot of talk about the issues already stated. But I first want to make the case that the right to protest is enshrined in the Constitution. It's a fundamental human right, which cannot be abridged just arbitrarily. Now, the issues of treason and frivolous comments against the Nigerian state are also very, very grievous. Once it was an agency of government that is tasked with protection of national security, as the DFS comes out to make such sweeping statements. Of course, we are all worried by the comments made by the DSS. And I don't think the DSS is known for making frivolous statements. So it means that they should have some information at their disposal. What most Nigerians are not aware of is that the DSS has a lot of technical capability, low unstated. So for people like us, we first think that maybe, just maybe, we give the DSS the benefit of the doubt that they have some information at their disposal and they have chosen the first step of escalation. So the narrative here is that the DSS first puts out a statement as part of the other measures it wants to take to prepare the minds. If you follow the last three paragraphs of the statement they put out, to first dissuade, deter the would-be persons who have these plots, to also discourage the civil society organizations, and then to also dissuade those unsuspecting Nigerians who may not be aware of a bigger plot, so people don't get being used as a front. So there's a lot to read in all of this, but I do think that we need to sound a note of caution that on no occasion should the rights of Nigerians be abridged under the pretext of a threat to the state. If there's a threat to the state, as the DSS has alleged, then we are more confident that by their statements, they are aware of it, they have their fingers on it, and then perhaps they are taking the right steps in the right direction to address it. So that's my initial reading to this.
Well, quite a number of commentators have advised that the DSS is an intelligence gathering state agency. It's not a whistleblowing agency. And that if it knows that certain persons are trying to sabotage the state, it should name them and act accordingly. But why would you think, as a strategy, the DSS has first taken the option of whistleblowing instead of just going after those people that the agency may have identified?
Dr. Bati, I think there's a deterrence element to what the DSS has done here. Remember that not every propaganda is negative. If we look at the statements that are being made, I think the issue of interim government was first muted by Afia Babalola here. Again, so there's subliminal messaging, subtle comments, and subtle signaling that can lead to some of social engineering towards unrest. So there's an information war going out. And I think that the DSS has assessed by their own considerations that this is the right time to jump into that same information domain. And then as their own strategy, first put out the statements, and then maybe take other options available to them. Remember also that I believe that the Nigerian democracy has matured to some extent. We don't see the outright willful use of the instruments of force against democratic institutions, at least not in a manner that would suggest or lead to a major unrest in the country. So I think that the military, the police, the DSS have over the years since 1999 become a bit mature in allowing the political process some space. So within the ambit of what is allowable, I think that the instruments of force have allowed politicians to express themselves, because it is said even in proverbial speak that you can't beat a child and not ask the child to cry. But if the DSS then feels that based on what they are seeing, that if they don't act now, we may have a bigger problem on our hands, perhaps as a means of escalating to de-escalate, they have taken the first step of joining the information space, and maybe we'll see how this goes. So it's my own assessment that they have a broader strategy at play. They've taken the first steps available to them, and they will watch and wait to see, because the allegation of treason against the Nigerian state is a very grievous offense. It attracts one of the most punishments based on our law. So
all right.
It's all the way I see it towards other options.
All right. I'd like to say a very big thank you to you for your time, security expert, joining us here, talking about all the talk about international government and the DSS releasing a statement.